NSC Strategic Communications Coordinator, John Kirby. John, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Glad to be here.
Before we get to Ukraine, I want to get to the breaking news of the day, the fact that classified material was found at the home of former Vice President Mike Pence. I'm wondering, John, if the NSC within this context has been reminded of proper procedures for handling classified material.
Well, the national security staff and everybody on it, we take that seriously every single day. We don't need reminders to know that the proper treatment of classified material is something that that we all have to abide by every single day that you come into work. You really can't do the job here without having access to classified information. And again, we all take that very seriously.
Okay, let me ask you about Ukraine. This reporting by NBC News, our Courtney Kuby has confirmed that the administration has made the decision to send Abrams tanks to Ukraine. Can you confirm that on the record?
No, I'm afraid I'm not able to confirm all the reporting out there. Well, look, we've seen that, of course, throughout the course of the day. What I would tell you is that we have stayed in lockstep with the Ukrainians in terms of talking about the kinds of capabilities they need in the fight in the near term, which is in the Donbass, open terrain, armored capabilities, clearly important, but also in the long term, in terms of what their longer-term defense needs are going to be. We don't know how long this war is going to last, and we want to make sure that Ukraine is able to defend itself for the long haul. So we are constantly talking to them about those capabilities, armored capabilities, whether it's Bradleys or, as President Zelensky has made clear, tanks are certainly part of those discussions, but I just don't want to get ahead of where we are.
Can you characterize the current thinking? Are you leaning in that direction towards sending more tanks?
What we are always leaning in the direction of is making sure that we are doing what we can in concert with allies and partners to make sure that Ukraine can defend itself against the threats it faces today, as well as where this war might be, in weeks and months to come. And those discussions are iterative. We have them every day. Secretary Austin was just in Ramstein last week meeting with 50 nations about security contributions to Ukraine. So that's what we're leaning in on. We're leaning in on making sure that Ukraine can defend itself.
One of the concerns that had been discussed as it relates to Abrams tanks is that they would be difficult to potentially train the Ukrainians to use. Is that still a key concern?
With any system that you're going to give Ukraine in this fight, we have to be concerned about the ability for them to train on it, use it, operate it, maintain it, repair it in a war zone. I mean, this isn't just peacetime. This is wartime for the Ukrainians. And so every time we give and contribute an advanced system, we have to factor that all in. And yes, it's absolutely a fact that the Abrams tank's the most powerful one in the world, but it's also very, very sophisticated. It has its own supply chain that would have to be minded. There's maintenance requirements that are different than on other tanks. And the Ukrainians aren't trained on how to fight in the Abrams tanks. That's not to say that they can't be trained or that they can't learn it. It's just you have to factor all that in when you're talking about systems that you will or will not give another country.
And it's our understanding there are reports that Germany is poised to send tanks to Ukraine. I believe NBC News has not yet confirmed that. But what are you hearing? Do you anticipate that Germany will be sending these tanks to Ukraine?
This has been an active discussion, this issue of tanks. Been an active discussion with our allies and partners.
Understood, but has Germany made a decision? Are you aware of whether Germany's made a decision?
I certainly will not speak for Germany in this. What I can tell you is that all of us as allies and partners trying to support Ukraine are talking about a range of capabilities that we know Ukrainians need, whether it's air defense or ammunition, certainly artillery, and now in this case, armored capability. And those conversations are ongoing. I certainly wouldn't speak for another ally. That's for them. Those are sovereign decisions that they get to make. All I can tell you is that we are interested in continuing to have these conversations.
John, when might we hear from President Biden about this? Could we hear from him as soon as tomorrow or by the end of the week?
I won't get ahead of decisions here one way or the other, Kristen, so I certainly wouldn't be able to get ahead of any potential announcements. We're having these discussions with our allies and partners. We want to make sure Ukraine can defend itself and can succeed on the battlefield, and that requires really having an honest conversation about the capabilities that they need most.
Help us to understand this moment, because based on my conversations, this is a critical moment. It is winter. These are the months when potentially Ukraine could make significant gains, and that could potentially lead both sides to the negotiating table to try to negotiate a peace and end to this horrific war that has claimed so many lives. How does the administration view this period, and what's the time frame for potentially helping that to happen?
we all know that this is a critical point in the war. I mean, you've got winter, as you said, makes it hard to fight. Not impossible. There's fighting going on. But both conditions in the air and the ground are not optimal for that. We also believe that Putin's going to take advantage of the winter to regroup, reorganize, reman, and re-equip his forces for potential offensive operations come springtime. We want to make sure that the Ukrainians not only can defend themselves against the active threat they're facing in places like Bakhmut today, but that they also can prepare themselves for fighting in the spring going forward and whatever their needs might be. In addition to all of that, you still have a significant air defense threat over Ukraine as Putin continues to throw cruise missiles and Iranian drones at civilian targets and infrastructure, trying to knock out the water and knock out the lights. So there's an awful lot going on right now in these crucial months, and we want to make sure that, again, we're setting Ukraine up for success here, not just now, today, but in coming weeks and months going forward.
John, last week at the podium, you outlined some concerning behavior by Wagner Group in Ukraine. What is your expectation of any actions that may be taken? Can you outline any sanctions that we can expect to learn?
I think you're going to hear more from the Treasury Department on some additional sanctions abilities here. Again, I won't get ahead of them. I previewed a little bit of that last week.
Can you give us a time frame?
I think in very soon you're going to hear more from the Treasury Department on this. The point is, and obviously we want to have economic levers and more pressure put on Russia and on Wagner specifically, this private military contractor. But again, we've got to, I want to take a step back here and remember what Russia's doing here. They are now throwing the bodies of convicts and prisoners that Mr. Prigozhin's getting out of jail, throwing them into the fight in places like Bakhmut and Soledar. It speaks to the level of manpower concerns that the Russians have and their ability to field forces in this fight in Ukraine. And it speaks to the degree to which Russia and Mr. Prigozhin are willing to further corrupt themselves by looking for help in the most unlikely places. They're getting support from Iran, and as I detailed last week, Prigozhin is getting support personally for his contracting group, Wagner, from countries like North Korea.
All right. John Kirby, thank you so much for joining us on a really critical day with a lot of information coming from Ukraine. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.